Normally, I do Q&As on Instagram in short form, just on my stories, but I figured now, especially with how many questions I got, it would be the time to go and do long format videos. And I think this is something I want to do in the future because obviously I write so extensively, and every time I write something, I have to cut it either for emails or for Instagram, or I don't even try on TikTok. That's not a place where people read a lot of stuff. God bless them. But I have to cut down my content. So here we're going to try and go a little bit longer form and get started with some questions on this Q&A. The first one I've got is, when am I going to Germany? And I've flown through Germany. I flew into Frankfurt going to the Alps. My flight got diverted. My luggage got lost. Not a great experience the first time. I think the second time I ever go to Germany, it will probably be if there's a Fourth Reich and I get drafted. Not really a place I want to go. Not a big drinker. Uh, sausages and war crimes. Not really my thing. I'm trying to become a full-time traveler and content creator. Any tips? Probably don't. It is a little bit overplayed and there's not that much money in it for a while. So I've been doing it 4 years and I feel in my life this is my calling. And I think that's kind of backed up by the story of my life, which is pretty wild time. But I think for the vast majority of people, if you're going into it to make money, if you're going into it to have attention, to get attention, that's probably going to leave you with a little bit of a void in your chest and you're not going to be happy. I've been doing it 4 years and I'm only just now starting to make any money, not even break even. So, thought there was an alligator there. But yeah, probably don't do it. And if you really want to do it as a little side hobby to spread a message or practice an art form. Don't do it to get famous. That's a really, I think too many people do that and they're not as happy as they could be. Must girlfriend prospects have longer hair than me? No. And I'm not even going to say, I would like girlfriend prospects to have nice hair, I think. I don't want my kids to get shafted on their hair, but yeah, we're not going to compete on hair. I don't think that's really up for debate, unfortunately. How did I come to Jesus? This is a very fantastic question, and it is actually not a single, there's a single moment where I was like, all right, I'm done. But it's the story of my entire life, really, I would say. So growing up, we would go to church, and we went to church for a while until the church kind of blew up and we had different stuff going on in our life. And it was just one of the things that kind of fell to the wayside. That would be about 13 or 14, maybe. And then when I was 19 or 20, I really felt like I needed to go to church. God just launched his boat. What happened was I'd been going through a really rough patch in my life. I had been assaulted. That led me down the rabbit hole of traveling and just spending a lot of time in places like this alone. Eventually, I was in the woods one night in Tennessee, and I had just gotten off the phone with my dad, and I said, "Hey, I need a circle of people around me. I kind of need a community." I was really alone at that time. Got off the phone, and I just started weeping, and I was camping in the mountains of Tennessee, and I literally said, like, I had this intrinsic knowledge that God was real, but I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. And I literally remember saying, like, Lord, I cannot do this anymore. And that was the turning point. It wasn't all butterflies and rainbows and ponies on the other side of that, but it was the beginning of something big and a substantial change in my life, obviously. And now that's how I am where I am today, which is on this dock in my hometown trying to get my questions up. What are your thoughts about weed? Have you ever done it? When and how much did you do it? I've never done hard substances, but weed and alcohol I have obviously done. And they just don't do it for me. I like to think I'm funnier and have better conversations when I'm sober, and weed just puts me to bed. So I've probably really gotten drunk 3 times, maybe in my life, and really gotten high twice in my life. I don't think it's anything worse than alcohol. I don't think people should be getting drunk or getting high. It's not what God has for you. It dulls the experience of life. And I think that's not a really beautiful thing. The world is beautiful enough as it is. Conversations are beautiful enough as they are. it's really a good thing to be present in all of those. Do I believe hugging trees and putting my feet in the grass has benefits? Obviously. Otherwise, why would God have given us these things? How is the modeling going? Can I still travel? Well, just did, I've done a little bit of modeling for brands and tourism boards and that kind of stuff, but I just did my first modeling photo shoot 3 days ago. And I've got to tell you, it is actually exhausting work. And I don't know how much models make, but if they make 1 million, they should make triple that because I don't think I could do it for a living. I'm sure just because of my aesthetic, more modeling work will come up in the future, but it is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. It was fun though. You meet a lot of cool people. And do I think Paul would have liked bidets? Probably, but you know, nobody really showered back then, so maybe not. What led me to start traveling? Well, going back to that Jesus little experience, I'd been doing traveling before that. I started traveling and camping because I was running away from my life. That first incident I told you about, my father, right around that same time, developed stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which has pretty much a confirmed death rate of 3 to 6 months. You will die. That led me into my first trip, which was a road trip across the country. I honestly can't believe I even found the courage to take that trip at 18 or maybe 19, but I was at such a low point in my life, like no friends. My dad was dying imminently, and there was not much to look forward to. So I needed an escape. That's why I started traveling. And over time, it kind of transformed from an escape into, well, now it's partially work, but more so therapy in a way. I stopped running from my problems the more time I spent alone in nature, and I was forced to confront them, and there's something really beautiful about that. I think that's one of the big benefits of creation. So you can only run so far from your problems, and they will find you. When is the buzz cut coming? It's not, because my hair is on my hat. It's on the side of my truck. It's on my website. It's Pricey Travels. I can't. Also, I'm quite fond of it. Where have I been outside of the USA, and why do I like New Zealand so much? Growing up, we did a lot of tourism in Central and South America. So my family is Cuban and Honduran. And no, I don't speak Spanish. Everybody else does except me. I'm sorry. But they don't have hair like me. So we did like tourism stuff like Belize and Mexico, like went to Chichen Itza and all the stuff in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico and the Bahamas, whatnot. But the real adventurous travel that you probably think I've always done, I only started doing at 18. I went to the Alps, so French, Swiss, and Italian. And that was my first trip on my own. And I went to kind of an insane place. And then I've been to New Zealand twice as an adult on my own. So I would really say I've probably only been to 6 countries authentically. I would toss Canada in there. I did a 2 or 3 week road trip through Eastern Canada. But most of my days in creation have been spent out, you know, on the western half in the Northeast and really experiencing that, and then only 5 or 6 countries outside the States. And the reason for New Zealand is because, well, if you go there, you'll find out. It's just really enthralling, and it's impossible to pick New Zealand up and put it back down and be satisfied. The first time I went there, I saw all the sites and I did all the stuff, and I came back this year saying, I'm going to go do more sites. I'm going to go see more stuff. And then now what's happened is I actually didn't do so much of that. I just started meeting a lot of people who have now become very close friends of mine. And New Zealand is a place I'll be going to for the rest of my life because of the nature, but because of also the people and relationships that I've experienced there. As an 18-year-old solo backpacker, any advice on how to plan my next trip? Yes, plan, but in moderation. Over planning gets you into some difficult spots. Over scheduling is a bit wild. The best adventures of my life have been the ones I did not plan. Not because I didn't plan them, but because they are so insane I'd be unable to plan them. Getting a 3 days notice and going backpacking in Alaska, sitting in a hostel and meeting a guy, and then road tripping across New Zealand. These kind of things you can't plan, and you have to leave room in your schedule for the crazy random adventures that come up. So besides that, on my website, briceytravels.com, I have a adventure checklist. On there, it goes through basically the top things for a road trip across America and backpacking across the world, what I would recommend and what I wish I knew starting out. So go download that. It's free. How do you live this life? 19 with $5,000 saved up, and I want to live an enjoyable life. Well, I don't. I think there's a little bit of a conflation that happens, especially today with hobbies and work. You can travel for the rest of your life and have insane adventures, especially being 19 years old with $5,000. I was 18 with 4 grand saved up for my first 2 trips, actually. My first trip cost me 4 grand to the Alps. I made all that money working in fast food, came back, worked more, and then saved up for my first road trip. So $4,000, $5,000, that can get you on a pretty insane adventure that will change your life and you'll remember it forever. Don't conflate that with traveling being the end all be all for the rest of your life. The more I've done it, the more I found that it is a hobby and it is work for me. That's not the point to life. I think there's more to life, especially with family. And so often, if you turn something from a hobby or a pastime into a business, it robs you of a lot of the joy because you have so many other things to focus on. So you're 19, you have $5,000, go take a rad trip somewhere. I mean, you can go anywhere with that amount of money. Focus on that. You'll figure out how to have an enjoyable life as it comes, but it doesn't come from traveling necessarily. That's just one of the nice things to do. You have to have an enjoyable life, even, you know, if it's this, especially if it's this, because this is most days. Was there ever a season where you questioned if this was really what God had for you? Yes. I don't want to say often because I know deep down in my heart it's been placed in my life for a purpose, but pretty routinely. The first time I was in New Zealand last year, I was sitting, I can tell you exactly where, in the cafe back left corner of the Arthur's Pass Visitor Center. I was with my friends Jared and Luke, and I was texting my mom, and I was actually tearing up. I think they noticed, but they haven't said anything about it. So money was running thin. I still wanted to stay for another month and a half, and there was really no progress with Bricey Travels, and there really hasn't been for, like I said, the first 3 years or so up until pretty much now, which is entering year 4. So I was very defeated, and that's happened a multitude of times. I think it's normal as you start anything worth doing. There are going to be times where it doesn't work out like you think, and you're like, what am I doing this for? Especially if it's something in the spiritual field, how I write so much about my faith and share those stories. I think there's probably more at play there, perhaps even a little bit of a spiritual battle, because I think somebody out there would prefer the world doesn't hear how I have triumphed over the 3 big tragedies of my life. And you can actually triumph over your tragedies as well with Jesus. So that's the incredible message. I'm going to New Zealand this year. Any advice or must stop places? My New Zealand travel guide is going to be out in the next 30 days. Quote me on that. briceytravels.com. If you pre order, you get like half off. So it's never going to be that cheap, and it's extremely in depth. Obviously, I've lived there for many months. Where are you from? Where's your favorite place to travel and stay a while? I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. This is my favorite place in the world. And yeah, will you ever shave your beard? Probably not. I actually grew a beard because when I was 16, a nurse at the doctor's office said I looked 12. And I decided, all right, I have to grow a beard now. And now I don't even get ID'd for anything. Everybody thinks I'm 30 years old. Which best advice for a small account with good content but no follows? Good content doesn't mean followers. What equals followers is viral content. So you can have the best photography in the world, but that's not going to get you viral. But why are you creating art? Are you creating art to be famous on Instagram, or are you creating art because there's value in the art you create and the world is better off for having your photograph? Don't mix up popular with good. I have a very special situation in that my content is not in the photo or the video, really, it's in the writing. So I can do trendy, cliche Instagram reels and TikToks and not devalue my work because my work's actually in the writing. But if you're doing photography or videography, please don't compromise on that to get famous, especially if you have a really intense message behind it that you're passionate about. But do know that trends are trends and the algorithms do exist. And if you make content that appeals to the viral side of the internet, and you do it like I have over 1,000 times, it will eventually go viral and you will eventually get attention. It just might take 700 posts in 3 years. Would you ever consider filming 30-minute episodes of your travels like a TV show? Yes, I hope this is kind of the start of it. I'd love to document more of my travels and bring you along, like literally watching them instead of just reading about the stories with hitchhiking with the Fijian truck driver across New Zealand. But YouTube is pretty intimidating, and I've gotten very comfortable with writing. So it's always creating art is always something you have to kind of push yourself to get out of your comfort zone a little bit more. And I hope this is the beginning of that. And I'm sure in future trips, I will or successfully vlog them a little bit more and share them with you. How did you get closer to God? How do you deal when Satan attacks you with whispers? You have to get into the Word. You have to read your Bible. You have to read Proverbs and Psalms, especially, and you have to read Paul's letters, and you have to read what Jesus said. The Bible is the living, breathing Word of God, and God speaks to us through his word in whatever situation we find ourselves. So read the Bible, pray, find community. That is huge. You need to have friends around you who can, yes, pray for you, but also just listen to what you're going through and just be there to support you with that. And that might mean going to church, which I know makes people uncomfortable. I was extremely uncomfortable going to church for the first time, like I said, when I was 18 or 19, but it turned out to be the best thing I've ever done. Not even because of specifically that church, but just because of the relationships formed that I know have been sustained for this many years and will be in my life for the rest of my life. So, have you seen a bear up close? I've seen black bears in Appalachia up close, but they're not really bears. They're like skittish dogs. Real bears like grizzlies, I've heard of. I was backpacking in Alaska, and the way it works in Denali National Park is you have squadrons of land. So I don't know what it is, maybe 10 miles by 10 miles. And the group who was in the squadron next to us the week before had reported seeing a grizzly come very close to them. The four of us went out. We got flown out by bush plane. We got dropped in, and we cooked some fantastic freeze dried meals. We were brushing our teeth. I'm sure we stank, but no grizzlies. Didn't see them at all. I've never seen a really terrifying bear, and I was actually very bummed returning home from Alaska having not seen a grizzly bear, but I guess it's better than getting mauled. What you do today, filing my taxes because it is pretty much 15 days past due, but South Carolina had a 15-day extension because of the hurricane that came through last year. How long are you going to grow the flow? I don't know if it's getting much longer than this. It might, but my barber stopped cutting hair during COVID, so now I'd have to go find like a good person to cut curly hair, and that's very difficult. It's easier to just let it grow and, wash it once a week, and it looks pretty cool. How do I plan my road trip flow, or do I just kind of send it? I know where I'm starting from and I know where I want to go. Anything between that is fair game. So wake up in Charleston and know I want to go to New Mexico. How am I going to get there? Well, first thing I've got to do is I've got to find the places to camp along the way. So I know coming from Charleston, I can probably get 8 hours is about the max. So I can go to Kentucky. There's federal land there. From Kentucky, I can go to Arkansas. There's federal land there. And maybe in the morning, I'll find cell service and I'll put it into Google Maps and then see what's along the way. When I'm out west, it's a little bit different. I've got to use like Onyx and All Trails and Google Maps again, like just searching for things to do. But I'm sure there's benefits to planning out every second of a road trip. I just think there's more downsides. So you know where you're starting from, pick your destination, figure out what's in between them, and always flip a U-turn or take the detour. That's the best stories in life. I should be fishing right now. What music genres do I listen to? Literally anything: rock, reggae, Cuban reggae, jazz, anything except heavy metal, country, even some Morgan Wallen if I'm like driving my truck and really feeling the V8. I might put some Morgan on. I saw you mentioned you're a missionary. What brought you to that? I didn't decide it, that's for sure. I didn't decide to do this. What I mean by missionary is sharing my experience with the gospel and with Jesus online. It's been very powerful, reached a lot of people. I know that with hard numbers, obviously. It's a very interesting call. You do make sacrifices with your personal life and especially online, your privacy and all those things. So I would not call it a choice. It was something divine that, in a lot of ways, I never feel like I decided to do. It was not placed on me, but I was placed here to do it, if that makes any sense. So I don't know if you're questioning whether you should do missions work, whether that's pretty valuable stuff of like literally going to Africa, or even more valuable, knocking on your neighbor's door and inviting them over for dinner and then blessing the food and kind of introducing them to that way. Just go do it. See if it's for you, go to church, walk by a homeless dude on the street and pray for him, and be the ambassador for the kingdom that anybody who knows Christ is called to be. I think that might be all the questions I've got, which is good because I need a sip of water and my voice is going out. But yeah, thanks for joining me in South Carolina. It's a pretty beautiful spot, but who knows? I don't have any plans to go anywhere next, but they always come up last minute and you can't really ever plan for them. So